back to the Natural Animal Podcast. I'm your host, Ruth Hatten, animal naturopath, animal lover, herbalist, and someone who believes in the power of plant medicine when it's offered with care, intention, and respect for the animals we serve and the animals we love, right? Today on the episode, I want to explore something that often stirs up conversation in the herbal world, especially for those of us working with animals, but pet parents too. And that is the question, should we be using alcohol in herbal remedies for animals? It's something that I've thought a lot about over the years. And actually, it was something that I thought of when I did my training, when I was studying my animal naturopathy diploma, when I was studying herbalism. And we learned about all the different we learned about the history of herbalism. We learned about all the way that, the magic of herbs, the way that they work, their benefits, their actions, how, their place in supporting animal health, in supporting pet health, all the different herbal preparations and things. And I'll touch on those in a bit shortly. But from that point, I was then thinking, I don't want to use alcohol. I just don't, it doesn't feel right to me. So recently I put all of my thoughts around this topic, well, not all of them, as much as I could think of when I was writing it, into a Substack article that goes deeper into why I choose to avoid ethanol completely when I'm making herbal remedies for animals. And in this episode, I'll touch on some of the key points from that piece and some other little bits and pieces that come up into my brain to be shared. But if you would like to read the full article, you will find the link in the show notes. It will definitely go deeper than what we go into today. And if you're interested in herbs and animals, you'll love the nitty-gritty that it goes into. So let's get on with the bits that I want to share with you today. So first, let's talk about why alcohol is used in herbal medicine at all. Now, the main form of alcohol that's used in herbal remedies is ethanol. And you might be thinking, hang on a minute, isn't that what's in petrol? Yeah, it is. And it's the same. It is the same chemical formula, right? It's the same thing. It's just that obviously, herbalists, I would hope, or anyone that makes, mass-produced herbal tinctures, then they're using food grade. They're not using the grade that goes into petrol, that is all very, very, very toxic. Yeah, ethanol is the most common form of alcohol that is used in herbal remedies, and that is what makes up what is the main part of what makes up. Well, it's not even the main part really. It's the part. It's what's called the menstruum, which is the solvent that is used to extract the medical constituents from a plant, right? So in a tincture, alcohol is the menstruum. There will be some water in there as well, but they're really relying upon that alcohol, right? So, so mostly it's ethanol, where in flower essences, different, they will most commonly use brandy. You can also use vodka in herbal remedies, but when you're buying commercial, they're not using vodka because vodka's not cheap. Ethanol is cheaper, right? So they're using ethanol. Now, alcohol, no matter whether it's brandy, ethanol, vodka, whatever, alcohol is incredibly effective in herbal medicine. Why? Because it extracts a wide range of therapeutic compounds from plants, like alkaloids, resins, and flavonoids, and it beautifully preserves those extracts. It does a really good job, right? It's also fast acting when it's absorbed through the mucous membrane. So if you've ever had a herbal tincture before, you probably remember, oh my God, it was the most disgusting thing I've ever had. It's directly absorbed through the mucous membranes in your mouth, and then it goes into the body and it does the work, right? And this can be especially important in acute or emergency situations where we need that fast acting medicine, right? Now, a lot of herbalists who work with animals use alcohol-based tinctures in their practice for whatever reason. It's totally their decision as to what they want to do. But for me, it was just like, it wasn't a hard, I was going to say it was a hard no. It wasn't a hard no. It was more like it was a definitive no, but it was like a somatic, like physical body, just no. That's not what I want to use. And so I said that I would touch on the different, herbal preparations. Tincture is just one of them, right? And so, when I was studying animal herbalism as part of my animal naturopathy diploma, we were taught about tinctures, glycerites, infusions, decoctions. So they're all your liquid. Well, no, they're not all your liquid-based preparations. You've also got oils and vinegars. And if you go right back to the beginning, herbal wines, right? Who doesn't want to have some wine with some herbs in there for healing benefits, right? So they're kind of like not your main, they're like your liquid herbal preparations. And then you've got your non-liquid or your firmer, harder, more solid forms like your balms and your ointments, right? So alcohol is used in herbal tinctures, right? And that is the most common. It's mostly what you'll see out there, right? And it will mostly say on the label ethanol, and that's your alcohol, right? So, but then there are glycerites, which instead of alcohol use glycerin. And then you've got your infusion, and your glycerites use water as well. So water is a common theme, right? Through the tinctures, the glycerites, the infusions, and the decoctions. Water is always there. And we're going to speak a bit about water and its role in herbalism shortly. But water is always there. So in the tinctures, it's alcohol and water. In the glycerites, it's glycerin and water. In the infusion, and obviously you've got your herbs in there too, right? Of course. In infusion, you've just got infusion and decoction, you've just got herbs and water. And it's just the way that you're making it that differs. So the infusion is like you're making a cup of tea. You'll boil your kettle, you'll put your herbs, whether they're dried or fresh, into your vessel, whether that's a mug or a jar. You pour the boiled water on top, you cover and you let it steep for 15-20 minutes to allow those actives to be released into that hot water. So then you've got this medicinal preparation, right? Infusions are very easy to make. They're very gentle. They're very, for animals, they're beautiful, but it's hard to get enough into the animal if you're using it for therapeutic reasons. They're great for more of your like preventative health care, where you only need a little bit and you're just adding little bits and you're adding the flavonoids and the polyphenols and the antioxidants in a small, gentle way regularly, right? For prevention. Decoctions, same idea, but you're using a pot on the stove. So your water goes into the pot, you boil it, you've got the herbs in there, you bring it down to simmer, you cover it, and you can do like a short simmer or a long simmer. And the other differences between infusions and decoctions are that infusions are made with the soft parts of the plant, your flowers, your leaves. Your decoctions are made with the hard parts of the plant, like the roots and the berries, right? The roots and the berries. Well, yes, hawthorn berry is a very hard berry when it's in that dried form. So you do that as a decoction. But anyway, we're getting into more detail than I was planning to. It's coming to turn into a herbal training. Now, I do have a herbal training course. It's called the Herbal Sessions, if you want to check that out, if you want to really learn a bit more about this stuff, the different preparations, the different herbs and how to use them for your animal. You get recipes and everything as well, so you can go check that out. I'll put the link to that in the show notes, actually. Wasn't planning on talking about that, but there you go. So you've got those 4 ways. Now, in a commercial production system or in a yeah, in a commercial production system, mostly it's tinctures. And when I say commercial production system, I mean outside of your home that you're just, DIYing, doing yourself. You can make your own. You can do all of that stuff DIY. You don't need to have a commercial system or commercial structures in order to make tinctures and glyceracts. You can do it yourself, right? But herbalists, we trained in this. We trained in the herbs, we trained in the preparations, we trained in the history, we trained in all of that stuff that comes down to the use of herbs as medicine, right? And then you've got the animal herbalists like me and the animal naturopaths like me who are trained in how to use those herbs for animals specifically. But the preparations don't change. Tincture, glycerate, infusion, decoction, right? So most herbalists will use alcohol, will use tinctures, right? And as I said, for me, it just did not resonate. And from the time I started practicing animal herbalism, I have always used glycerin, or when I've been advising clients on DIY options, and I will give them recipes for how to make an infusion or a decoction, depending on the part of the herb that I'm recommending that they give to their animal, right? So I've never, ever used tinctures, alcohol-based tinctures, right? So alcohol has a very strong taste, and that can interfere with palatability, which is a huge thing when it comes to animals. And medicine is not medicine if it's not actually taken, if it's not consumed by the animal, right? Another reason that I want to talk about, the use of tinctures is that, I said that it's really good in an acute emergency situations. Apart from the fact that using alcohol for animals just does not resonate with me, it's also that I'm not dealing with acute emergencies. I'm supporting animals with chronic health conditions, gut issues, immune imbalances, skin sensitivities, emotional stress, organs that are losing their ability to function properly, like kidney disease and liver disease and things like that. So these are chronic health. Sometimes they can be acute, and the way that I make my herbal remedies can still be very, very beneficial. It's not like you'd only use tinctures for acute and glycerate for chronic. That's not true. It's just that alcohol, because an alcohol tincture is faster acting, that's, it's faster acting, right? But it's not to say that the glycerate won't also be of benefit in those acute situations. I've had animals who've had acute liver issues, acute kidney issues, as well as, those animals who've had chronic, right? And the glycerates have worked I wouldn't say just as well, because I haven't given the tincture, right? I've given the glycerate. But have they helped? Yes, they have. The glycerates have helped even in those acute situations. But mostly I'm supporting animals with chronic health conditions. And sorry, I wasn't sure if I was recording this. I was like, oh my God, but I am. Phew. And these animals with the chronic health conditions that I mentioned, they need medium to long-term support on a daily basis with certain breaks in between, and that will also depend on what herbs are being used. Some herbs, there is safety to be taken into account, and there are some herbs where it's contraindicated, there's a caution, or there is a contraindication that they shouldn't be given for long periods of time. Versus you've got other herbs like nettle that are very, very gentle, very, very safe, and can be given every day forever, right? But yeah, the animals that I work with, they've got chronic health conditions. They need medium, long-term to support, and they will either need herbs over months or sometimes forever, right? 4 years, right? And they will need that daily, but with, breaks cycled in, right? So for this kind of care, the work that I'm doing, I err on the side of caution. I err on that, alcohol, no. Even small amounts of alcohol, small amounts of ethanol given regularly can place additional stress on an animal's system. especially when that system is already compromised. Whether there's a toxic burden or there's a health issue or there is aging, these are compromised systems. So by putting in ethanol, alcohol, it can have a negative effect, right? Pardon me. And my concerns when it comes to the use of alcohol and herbal remedies aren't just physiological, they're also energetic. Alcohol carries a very particular energetic vibration, one that many spiritual and energy based practitioners like myself consider to be disruptive, fragmenting, they interfere with consciousness, and they're low in frequency. While alcohol may act quickly on a physical level, it can feel sharp and scattering, ungrounding, abrasive, and it has a tendency to pull us out of coherence, to interfere with the quiet, energetic communication that is always happening between the body and the spirit. In animals who are so finely attuned to energy more than we are, this disruption can matter just as much as what's happening with them biochemically. And so for me, the question isn't, can I get away with using it in a safe way? And there are safer ways. I'm going to touch on that once I've said this. Can I get away with using it safely or in a safer way? The question for me is, why would I use it at all when there are other ways that are just as effective and far more aligned with gentleness, clarity, and safety? And trust that this is safe, right? Looking for a natural way to support your animal's health, something that's gentle, effective, and energetically aligned? Come take a look at Three Rays Animal Apothecary. It's my range of handcrafted botanical elixirs and extracts made just for animals. Each one is created in small batches using premium organic human grade ingredients, and always with care, intention, and a whole lot of love. These blends are infused with healing energies, and they are guided by nature, spirit, and the wisdom of the animals themselves. From immune and digestive support to skin health, stress relief, detox, and beyond, everything I make is about honouring your animal's whole being, body, mind, and spirit. You can explore the range at threeraysanimal.apothecary.com.au. Three Rays Animal Apothecary, where nature and spirit meet for the animals we love. So I said, can I get away with using it safely? So is there a safe way of using an alcohol tincture? Depending on the practitioner, they might give you dosing guidelines beyond just these many drops. You will generally find that with your tinctures, the doses are small, right? It might just be like 3 drops twice a day. And your glycerites can be higher doses and generally are given in a higher dose, right? In addition to the dosing with the tinctures, you might get some other support in terms of how to give it in a safer way by diluting it, right? So this helps to reduce the alcohol content even further. So diluting it with water, or helping to evaporate some of the alcohol off. And how do you do that? You can leave a dose, your animal's, morning dose in a small dish or a cup so the alcohol can evaporate. Or you can mix it with warm water or warm broth. So that will dilute it as well. So these are ways that you are decreasing the negative impacts of the alcohol. But for me, it's kind of like whenever I've done that myself, like if I've I've got to put a dose in a small cup and allow it to sit for however long. So, and how long is that until the alcohol evaporates, right? It's like, the mornings are so busy, meal times are so busy. I've got to also remember to do that, right? So for me, it's just like, this is too much. It's just too hard, right? So yeah, there are safer ways you can give your animal a herbal tincture as opposed to the glycerate, which doesn't have the alcohol in. So in the Substack article, so I talk all about all of that, most of that stuff, not all of it, most of it. But I also share the history, a little bit of the history around the use of alcohol and glycerin in herbal medicine, because it's worth remembering that herbal medicine did not start with tinctures. You do some research and it will say that tinctures are the oldest form, it's been around the longest, and that is just not true. Herbal medicine started with herbs, obviously. But in terms of that menstruum, that solvent that extracts the healing medicinal benefits of that plant, it all started with water. It started with what I've already shared a bit about with you, infusions and decoctions, pots on the fire, herbs steeped slowly, and medicine shared in relationship, right? This is how things were done. These are the days of the medicine woman, right? Um, you know, Small communities, and they would go to the medicine woman and they'd get their herbs and they'd make their infusion and they'd drink it or their decoction and they'd drink it. And, it was gentle and it was communal. You weren't all drinking from everyone's herbs, obviously, but that community aspect of this is the community or the tribe's medicine woman or medicine man, and you go to them and they give you the medicine that you need, right? Now, so alcohol didn't exist in the beginning, right? And it didn't become common until the 16th century, and it really took off with the rise of Western pharmacology. And I'll also add at that time that we saw not degeneration, well, I guess it was the degeneration, but we saw I can't think of the word, we saw the disregard for natural medicine, right? It all became pharmaceutical. That the beginning of the pharmaceutical era, right? But, I'm jumping ahead in the centuries. So 16th century, rise of Western pharmacology. So herbalism was still very active then. But even then, as alcohol became common, not everyone followed that path. Not everyone started using it. In the mid-1800s, herbalists began using glycerin, a sweet alcohol-free extract, as a solvent in its own right, right? It also acts as that solvent to extract the medicinal actives, right? Glycerin is gentle. Like alcohol, there are different forms, there are different qualities of glycerin, so be mindful of that. Just because it's got glycerin doesn't mean it's safe, okay? There's nasty glycerin too. Only use certified organic flax-derived glycerin, okay? You can get glycerin. A lot of glycerin is derived from palm. If you've got issues with using the palm industry, you want to be making sure that it's sustainably sourced, that the orangutans are not having their home taken from them. Palm is the most common. You can get glycerin that's derived from coconut and flax, as I said. So glycerin, and you want to be obviously using food grade. And as I said, I only use organic, right? So glycerin is gentle, and even though it's really, really sweet, it's actually not a sugar. It works more like a fat, and I go into a bit more detail on this in the Substack article. Because it tastes sweet and it doesn't have that pungent, sharp taste that alcohol does, it is much more palatable to animals, especially dogs, because did you know dogs have sweet taste receptors? Dogs like sweet things, right? Cats are more like savory, salty, umami kind of taste receptors, right? And as I said earlier, palatability is crucial. Medicine isn't medicine if it's not consumed, right? You can go spend all the money and buy all these amazing remedies, but if your animal doesn't take them, they are of no use. They're of no good to your animal. Palatability is super, super important. Now, because it's not a sugar, it doesn't spike blood sugar levels. It doesn't disrupt the gut. It has preservative qualities like alcohol, not as much. So an alcohol tincture, you can get like 5 to 6 years of shelf life. A glycetract, you on average 12 to 18 months, but you can go as much as 2 years and sometimes even more than that. But it will be depend on how it's stored, right? So shorter lifespan, but really we're making herbs to be used. And unless you're in some massive corporate empire who are making masses and masses and masses of herbal tinctures, and you need them to have that really long shelf life because you're not moving stock that fast because you have so much stock. But little me in my little home practice, it's not an issue. I make my herbal remedies fresh as they're ordered, right? So that you're getting that maximum, you're getting that, I always err on the side of caution and say it's a 12-month shelf life. But if they're using it as directed, then they're going to be using it well within that shelf life period. So it's just a non-issue for me in my work. So I digress. So yes, it has that's right. It's talking about preservative qualities, but also carries quite a nourishing, grounding energy that feels supportive for animals, particularly the animals I work with, especially those who are stressed, fragile, or energetically open. And I'm just going to pop something in here that just came in of interest. Have you heard of Ayurveda? If not, Ayurveda is an ancient form of medicine from India. And in Ayurveda, which is a very quick Ayurvedic lesson, right? In Ayurveda, there are things called doshas, and these are your constitutional types. Vata, Pitta, Kapha. So there's three. We all are predominantly one, but we all have aspects of all three. Now, the dosha that is the least grounded of all is Vata. I am Vata. I'm Vata Pitta, predominantly Vata, right? Anyway, and Vata is also quite common amongst all because it can be quite central across the board for people to have a Vata imbalance. Stress can cause a Vata imbalance because anything that brings you, that ungrounds you can mean that you've got a Vata imbalance, right? Kapha is the most grounded earth element, right? But Vata is all air and wind. Okay, and so to help bring back a Vata imbalance, to ground that energy, to nourish that energy, it's like oily foods and cooked foods and sweet. And this is how this conversation, this lesson on Ayurveda is relevant to the conversation today, is that one of the things you can do to balance that Vata imbalance, or if you are predominantly Vata, to nourish that dosha, to nourish your Vata dosha, is the sweet flavor profile. And glycerin is sweet, which is probably why it's considered to be nourishing and grounding. So there you go. Bringing in some Ayurveda into this as well. Now, I'm not an qualified Ayurvedic practitioner. I just know a lot about it. I have practiced it myself. I've seen Ayurvedic doctors. I've read a lot about it, right? But I'm not a qualified Ayurveda practitioner. So just want to flag that there. It's just something that I'm very interested in and that I follow in quite a big aspect of my life. I still have smoothies though, and I always remember one of my Ayurvedic doctors saying to me, Vata should never have smoothies, especially in winter. It's too cold. We need warming foods. So it's winter here. I'm still having smoothies, but I'm being sneaky and I'm putting cardamom and ginger in there to warm it, to warm the energy of that smoothie. That's how I excuse my non-Vata breakfast. Anywho, what were we talking about? Glycerin, nourishing and grounding. Yeah, so it can be quite supportive. And I already said I use certified organic flax glycerin in my formulations, and I create the blends from scratch. Some of my generic blends I do have in stock of, but not a lot. Mostly it is made to order so that it's fresh and has the longest shelf life possible. So every blend that I create, and this making it fresh and to order also goes into that, right? I'm creating every blend with the intention of supporting the whole animal, right? Not just their symptoms, but their whole body, physically, emotionally, and energetically. And when I'm making a herbal remedy to order, I'm making it with my energy focused on that particular animal, right? So it just brings more of that intentionality into my work for that animal. It's like that dedication. I'm dedicating this whole thing, this whole beautiful herbal preparation to this animal, right? Now, I mentioned that we've already touched on about, alcohol was not the beginning of herbal medicine. Water was, water and herbs, right? But all, and then glycerin started coming around in the mid 1800s. And there was a early 20th century herbalist, Edward E. Shook, and he really believed, tooted the horn of glycerin. He really believed in its therapeutic value. So not just for its use as an effective menstruum, as an effective solvent to release those medicinal extracts from the plants, but that it had its own therapeutic value in and of itself. He saw glycerin not just as a solvent, but as something that actively helped the body to eliminate toxins and restore balance. So you cannot say that about alcohol. There is no health benefit to ethanol. The only health benefit, which I'm kind of like contradicting myself, is that it's useful as an extraction method, right? But you don't have it's not helpful in eliminating toxins. It's not helping in restoring balance. I would say that it brings those things into the equation, right? That it creates imbalance, that it brings toxins in, right? So Edward Shook, and he wasn't compromising. He chose something that was safe, gentle, and energetically aligned. And that deeply reflects how I feel, and that herbal medicine can be powerful without being harsh. So, if this episode has sparked something in you, this topic of herbs and using alcohol in herbal medicine for animals, is this also contraindicated for adults with sensitivities to alcohol or who just don't like to take alcohol, but also children? And if you think about, animals are like children. So if we're not using alcohol tinctures for children, we're using glycerites, then why are we using alcohol tinctures for animals? Just going to leave that there. So if you've been wondering about the use of alcohol in remedies for your own animals, or if now I've got you wondering, you're going and checking that label and seeing if it's got ethanol written on there, I invite you to read the full article on this topic on my Substack with the animals. The article itself is called The Problem with Alcohol in Herbal Tinctures for Animals, and it's a deeper dive into everything I've touched on here today, physically, energetically, holistically, practically, historically. You'll find the link in the show notes, or you can just head to ruthhatten.substack.com. I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you used alcohol-based remedies for your animals before? Have you explored glycerites or infusions or decoctions instead? What have you noticed in your animals or in yourself? Let me know in the comments on Substack or in the comments on this podcast episode, whether you're listening to this you can't comment on Apple, yes, but you can leave a review with your comments on this episode. I would love for you to leave a review. And you can comment on Substack and on Spotify, and you can comment on YouTube. I don't know about other podcast platforms, but there you go. You'll find a way to send me, or you can just send me a message. Thank you for listening. Thank you for choosing this gentler path for your animal and for being someone who cares deeply about the animals in your life. As I mentioned, I would love for you to review the show. It so helps to get your feedback. It so helps to know that people are listening. I do see the analytics, and so I know people are listening. But I love reading your reviews. I love reading your comments. And, because of the way the algorithm works, it helps to push the show out to more people. And wouldn't you agree that more people need to hear this information? Thank you so much. Big, big love to you and your animals, and see you next time.